It's a beautiful place that you kind of forget that you're in London and you hear bird song. When you look up, you just see trees. You don't feel like you're in a city at all. I'm Zach. I'm the Trust Coordinator at Abney Park Trust. And Abney Park Trust are the custodians of Abney Park. We make sure that the history and the ecology is preserved and promoted here. It was 1840 when the park was set up, part of an Act of Parliament for 7 magnificent cemeteries. There were 2 aristocratic houses here, and it was an arboretum. So it already had this quite unusual start, and then it was a non-denominational burial ground.
So my name is Alan Gartrell, and I do historic trips and tours around Abney Park Cemetery. I've always had an interest in cemeteries, but I was delighted to find that my local cemetery, Abney, was one of London's Magnificent 7. I like the sort of melancholy state of repair and the historic monuments. But I also have family buried here. My great-grandparents, who were Welsh Methodists, their grave inscription is in Welsh, and this is the great graveyard for nonconformists. It was started by Congregationalists. It says a non-sectarian cemetery, and also one where people wouldn't have to pay fees to Anglican clergymen.
I still get lost in the park even though I work here, and I think the idea of actually getting lost is quite nice. Yeah, here we are. George Laban, he's Champagne Charlie, musical singer, sponsored by Moe. And Nellie Power. There's lots of, they're all clustered together, which I think they'd all be quite happy about. This is the grave of Frank C. Bostock. He was a travelling menagerist, so a man with lots of wild animals. And he was known of bringing the sort of American style of the travelling circus to the UK. Abney Park is a final resting place for a lot of people who think quite differently or progressively, involving abolitionists, radicals, musical stars and menagerists. Our main grave search function is that we have someone email us saying, I think my grandfather or great-great-grandfather is buried here, and then it's up to Hayden in the office to go through all of our records, which, being Victorian records originally, are hardly extinct.
A person gives us a name, I check the burial records, and then I search for the number on a map. There's about 60,000 grave plots, and then going out on site and trying to find it. Sometimes there'll be like 20 or more people in the same grave. 54434, that one there. Oh, there we go. So it's basically a lot of looking. Normally, it's also a bit of luck.
In normal times, this would be like an open-air theatre space, and the chapel would just be used for like multiple different purposes, sometimes for creative workshops, but at the moment, sadly, for nothing. Everyone was in a bit of a state of panic initially with COVID. The fund meant that paying wages of staff and keeping everything open and afloat and still answering emails and not having to just completely close the trust. But it also meant that we could buy pieces of equipment to help us convert to offering virtual events rather than physical events. One of them being 360 virtual concerts inside the chapel of different local musicians. Thanks to the National Lottery Heritage Fund and Hackney Council, the chapel will be restored soon and be turned into a venue space, but we wanted to capture it in its ruined state as much as we possibly could. What the grant really did is, instead of being on the back foot during COVID, we could sort of attack the idea of going virtual and try and make the best out of it we could, rather than just really money saving and being very scared all the time. We actually got to move forward, and if anything, we kind of grew our audience a bit because of going online, and yeah, it allowed us to really jump at that opportunity.